folks. Our guest is Brother Keidi. He's a researcher. The number to call to speak to Brother Keidi, 800-450-7876. For the break, Brother Keidi ran down a bunch of numbers, and let me ask you this, though. Since all those numbers that you gave us, why does it seem this virus seems more lethal than the others, or is it just a perception?
It's just a perception. In fact, it's not more lethal. In the latest statistics, they're talking about the lethality of this one appears to be somewhere around maybe 1-2%. It's not very lethal at all. SARS was said to be higher than that. Swine flu is said to be higher than that. The panic, the hype, the hysteria, what has been going on from the media across social media networks and from many other outlets is the most intense that it's ever been. And I have my conspiratorial theory of why we see as many as 11 or 12 distinct groups all showing quite an excitement over the appearance of this phenomena. But according to the numbers, the epidemiology, mathematics, this is not particularly alarming. Again, if all of this attention, Carl, was focused on pneumonia, if all of this attention was focused on the rate of cancer in the United States is now 38.4%, it could be focused on metabolic diseases and disorders, I would welcome it. I would champion all of them. But they're focusing on a bad diagnosis because we got to go back to what we learned when we looked at the whole HIV equals AIDS hypothesis. The diagnostic methodology becomes key. Because if you don't have a verifiable diagnostic tool, you really can't say anyone is infected.
Wow, and this is what your research...
Joe.
My research has been showing that these enzyme-linked immunosorbent assays, ELISA tests, earlier on they were called EIAs, enzyme immune assays, they're all terribly flawed. And there's so much to this. I mean, I don't want to repeat the 12 hours of radio time I've given to this. But the thing about it is this. I'll make this real simple. If an infectious agent appears, then in the short term, your body is battling it. Before your body successfully battles it, it shows up in your blood, and it is diagnosed by a procedure formerly known as Koch's postulates. But they seem to throw out Koch's postulates when HIV appears. So in the first 90 days, before you have built up antibody immune resistance to it, they have to test directly for the virus, either isolate it, culture it, and then prove it causes disease in another species, and then isolate it there, that's Koch's postulates, or they have been using a system they call PCR, which stands for polymerase chain reaction, invented by Dr. Kary Mullis, a Nobel Prize winner in 1983 for this discovery in chemistry. But Kary Mullis was one of the biggest critics about how they were using his PCR test to give people the notion that they were infected when in actuality they really couldn't prove it. And so therefore, if your body takes care of whatever the pathogen, the infection is, at 90 days, you will see the appearance in large measure in the blood of the antibodies meant to keep it away, meaning you're protected. These are IgG and IgA antibodies, specific types of white blood cells, antibodies. And they're not showing up for 90 days. So the question then becomes, Carl, how did they then diagnose people with coronavirus? And the 90-day period hasn't even come from the first cases.
That begs the question, too, because we saw 45 claim he had a test, and the next day he says he came back negative. And, a lot of people say, wait a minute, he got his results that fast? But then again, this being the president has privileges, so it might have something to do with that. But you're saying that's unlikely that he could have gotten the results back that quickly?
I think it's unlikely that the tests and the antibody-based tests could even reliably exist inside of that 3-month window that the industry always talks about. So therefore, knowing that, I go searching for what tests were they using to test the initial patients in China and South Korea, and we found it. I found what I was looking for. They were using old leftover SARS antibody tests from the 2003, 2003 SARS outbreak. It might have been 2012, 2013, but you remember SARS. It wasn't that long ago. And, sometimes I have so many numbers in my head, I have to refer to my papers in front of me before I can be as precise as I need to be. But again, anybody can ask me to verify anything I say. So we found out that they went back to the old SARS coronavirus tests. Just look that up, SARS coronavirus test. I found papers from 2015 talking about the SARS coronavirus test and cross-reactivity, meaning it will hit positive on something that's not exactly what they're looking for. This is called non-specificity. And I found that in the papers, they identified as many as 12 different coronaviruses out there, some from bats and pigs and cats and a number of human coronaviruses. And they said that this particular test they were using cross-reacted to all of the Group A or Group 1 coronaviruses. And so it's cross-reacting to at least 5 or 6 other coronaviruses that have been around since at least, some say 50 years, some say since, or for about 80 years, coronaviruses have been identified.
All right, hang on a sec. We got some folks who want to talk to you. 800-450-7876 to speak to Brother Keidi. John is on line 2. He's calling from Baltimore. John, you're on with Brother Keidi.
First of all, thank you, Carl, for getting me on. Brother Keidi, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Thank you, thank you for coming up here. And Carl, you never seem to amaze me, the level of guests that you have here. This is not the type of guest that I don't think CNN or Fox News would ever put on. Because...
You still there, John?
Conspiracies. I have a few conspiracies. I think, first and foremost, this thing with China and the USA, I think that is centered around this. I truly don't believe it's as big as they say it is. And I had a big question of all of the testing. If this virus was first discovered on December 31st of 2019, how could you test for something that didn't exist up until this point? And the testing that is coming out now, who's to say how valid that is? And what if there's something that you've eaten previously that would trigger a positive result in these tests? And why do you think celebrities are so quick to come to the forefront and say that they tested positive for something like this?
That's a bunch of legitimate questions, John. Thank you for your call. Brother Keidi, you want to tick them off one by one?
I want to salute your caller, your listeners. They listen to the Carl Nelson Show because they want to stretch the boundaries of their thought, their imagination. They want to hear a different explanation on the phenomena all around us. And they can get a good dose of that here on WOL, especially with the Carl Nelson Show. So he made a number of points with which I am in accord. I hope to get a chance to meet my brother next time I come to the DMV. And I think maybe we're overdue to come because this hysteria, this panic that is happening across the country, around the world, this is the real epidemic, and this is the most dangerous epidemic that we have seen appear in the world in exactly 100 years. When in the aftermath of the 1929 stock market crash, and we've seen over 30% knocked out of the stock market within the last 30 days, that then amplified going around the world. And in the face of all of that, we saw in Italy, Spain, and Germany the ugly, nasty, dangerous, deathly face of fascism rise. And Carl, for 2 years, I have been saying to people, we need to read that book by Johann Galton that talks about the end of the American empire, what next, in which he forecasted that America's global empire, like the Soviet Union, would go into collapse, and that by 2025, America would start to resemble a fascist state. Then later, after the second George Bush presidency and the invasion of Iraq, he changed that date to 2020.
So we're there then. John's question, though, he asked a question about these celebrities that have come out and say they've tested. And the question is, one, where did they get the test kits from? Because I spoke to a doctor, he can't get any. He was concerned too. How did they get the test? Because he'd like to have some test kits for his patients. And all these celebrities would get the test, and then where do they send it and get the results from? And that's one of the questions that John asked. So maybe you can respond to that one.
I can only speculate about that, and I try and stay out of the area where I can't verify or prove what I'm saying. But we might imagine that, like the rest of the U.S. healthcare system, there is an us system and a them system, meaning the wealthy elite have access to a level of medical access. I'm not even going to call it care. I'm going to call it medical access that the majority of people don't have access to. That's the only thing I can say about that. But also, if you look at the number of celebrities that are in our lives these days, we have a whole bunch of these people who we're familiar with. And quite simply, just statistically, if you look at all of these celebrities we know about, every year some of them are going to die of cancer, they're going to have heart attacks, they're going to have all of the things that regular people go through. If you're looking at 15.1 of 100,000 people will die of pneumonia this year, then if we know 100,000 celebrities, then 15.1 of them are going to die of pneumonia.
Interesting. 800-450-7870. I think we have another John calling from Laurel in Maryland online too. I tell you what, hang on, John, because I hear the drummers warming up. We got to take a short break. We'll come back. We'll speak with you. Folks, you too can join our conversation with Brother Keidi. He's a researcher talking about the coronavirus. Reach out to us at 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after this short break right here on